This is the fifth annual Mental Wellness Conference. The theme is mental health and well-being for all, leaving no adolescent behind. And it's no accident that we have the founder of Oxbridge Terror College here with us, and our chairperson who will be coming in a couple of seconds to give the opening remarks. We're very excited to hear what she has to say, and more importantly, to give a perspective and set the template for this conference. We want to give a welcome address, the chairman of OISA Foundation, Mrs. Olapeju Shakora. I'm so sorry.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, and thank you very much, Oscar. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you, both physically and those joining us online, virtually, to participate in the 5th edition of the annual OISA Mental Wellness Conference, themed Mental Health and Wellbeing for All, Leaving No Adolescent Behind, in commemorating the October 10 Mental Health Day. I want to specially welcome our chairperson, Dr. Mrs. Femi Musmoya, founder and MD of Oxbridge Tutorial College. Thank you, Ma, for graciously accepting to chair this event. I also warmly welcome our erudite speaker, Dr. Mrs. Oluyemisi Yamali, Vice President of the Association of Psychiatrists of Nigeria and a consultant psychiatrist with the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Yaba. Dr. Yinka Akidaome, who is the founder of the Children's Development Center, although she's unavoidably absent, but she had asked Dr. Matilda Kerry Osazwa to represent her. And to represent and deliver a presentation. Also representing the Permanent Secretary, Lagos State Ministry of Health, Dr. Olusegun Oboye, is Dr. Tolu Ajomani, Head of Mental Health at the Lagos State Ministry of Health. Sadly, an estimated 20 to 30% of our population are believed to be suffering from one form of mental health challenge or the other. This, coupled with the current reality of shortage of needed medical professionals in our environment, we have no choice but to develop other strategies to stem the tide of mental health disorder in our country, and particularly among our adolescents. In the last 5 years, OISA Foundation has championed the awareness of mental health, mental well-being of adolescents by our mental health awareness, prevention, and promotion programs for educators, parents, and caregivers, as well as provide a platform to discuss and develop strategies that will assist schools adopt appropriate public health strategies that will support the optimal mental well-being of adolescents, and by extension, the mental health and well-being of the family and the entire school community. We believe if adolescents' mental health is properly managed, we can birth a generation of resilient young adults who will thrive during crises and opportunities. As part of our intervention strategy is that we have worked with other experts and partners to develop a basic mental health curriculum for teachers and caregivers. We have partnered with the Teacher Training Institute for the training of teachers and school leaders on mental health to bridge the knowledge gap required to support the adolescent mental, emotional, as well as their physical well-being. We wish to acknowledge the support of all our partners and speakers at all our conferences in the last 5 years. It's been a journey worth taking. Today, our speakers will educate us on how best to ensure inclusive mental health being for all in our schools and homes, and create awareness on learning disabilities and its correlation to mental health disorder, as well as discuss the policy framework and issues of signposting when and if issues do arise. I thank you all for joining us this morning, and I wish all of us a very impactful day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. And once again, for those joining online, it's great to have you with us, and we'd like to welcome you officially. Before I move on to the next item, which is our chairperson's opening remarks. And her journey has taken her through the world of science, microbiology, and of course education as well. But of particular interest is what she founded, which is Stories Worth Telling, that presents quarterly events as a means of informing, inspiring, and influencing the mindset of not only the youth, but across board. And our chairperson has been at the helm of this, and the success of Oxbridge Tutorial College is not a secret. She's also the immediate past chairperson of the Association of Private Educators in Nigeria, APEN, alongside Women's Group Circle Mentoring. And it is such an honor to have her here with us, particularly because of the theme for this year, and how we need to not only catch them young, but before they become full-fledged adults, find a way to shape and mold their thought process, their thinking, confidence in themselves, and more importantly, how to deal with challenges when they do arise. It is no secret the state of the nation and the world at large, where a lot of people are getting better at hiding how they feel and how it's more difficult for them to even express themselves. Social media has given you, or given us a platform where there is expression, but there is very little understanding of what is going on in the minds of people. Ladies and gentlemen, please do make welcome the conference chairperson for the day, Dr. Olufemi Okunsanya. So usually we have an OISA welcome, which is a very loud applause, a round of applause.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Greater thanks to the OISA family for inviting me to be chairperson for this year's event. I've been part of the events of the conferences, annual conferences, since inception. And I remember the very first time we all met at LBS, which was about 5 years ago, as the chairperson said. And I am so delighted that the foundation has carried on with this, what I call the gospel of what we can do with regards mental health and well-being for all. It says for all, but with special emphasis on adolescents. This is a message that I'm going to appeal that we all live with from here today. Whatever it is we can do, because with mental wellness, there's a lot of stigma attached, and that usually makes people clam up, makes people not want to express themselves, and therefore my charge to everyone here today will be, see something, say something. If you are school owners, that should be your charge to all the students in the school. See something, observe your colleagues, see what's going on with them, report to the authorities, and lend as much support as we can lend. I'll start by quoting the Business Harvard Publishing that did a survey on mental health. And the issues among college students have skyrocketed. That was their conclusion. From 2013 to 2021, the number of students who reported feelings of depression increased 135%. And the number of those with one or more mental health problems doubled. So we can see that it's a global problem. And before it becomes a pandemic, we need to do something seriously about it. Simply put, the well-being of our students is in jeopardy. And therefore we can't afford to tread gently or to treat with kid gloves whatever the situations that are ongoing. And then they did some survey as well, and I'm just going to share the comments of some of the students that they spoke to who belong in this bracket of adolescents. One said, throughout college I faced mental stress, not only from school like everyone, but also from many constant family issues going on back home that required my energy. So the host for today did mention, the host, the MC, the moderator, did mention that social media Yes, social media is one of the major causes of the depression and the issues that adolescents go through. We're going to hear from our speakers. I'm not the main speaker, but just enumerating all of this, and comparing themselves, not feeling accepted. Little things can trigger mental unwellness, I'll call it, in young people. One said, when my mental health was at its poorest, I was very disconnected from my classes. I went to, I think, 5 or 6 out of 30 finance classes I had during the semester. So that child obviously was there but was not there, was physically present but not mentally present. And therefore we need to see how schools have a major role to play in this regard, because we have these children, duty of care, we are caregivers, they're under our care, and we must constantly see what we can do. I run a school, and therefore I say I'm in the eye of the storm, because we see a lot that's going on with the students. But I'll share experiences. I often find myself having breakdowns and calling my parents in a panic about my future. Again, that's another comment from a student. And when students are not quite sure how to navigate their lives, there are so many things that can be stressors, that can trigger off mental unwellness. And parents also, I'm sorry to say, do contribute. They probably sometimes set high standards of expectations for the children. I see students walking towards me and I see them looking glum, and I say, why aren't you smiling? Why are you looking so low? And say, oh, I'm stressed, I'm anxious. Oh, I didn't sleep until this time, because my parents have said, if I don't make this grades, then I'm not going, I'm not progressing, I'm not going to the UK, and so on and so forth. So it's a collective responsibility. I always run in schools, and for all of us here, as parents and uncles, brothers, sisters, aunties, running schools is a tripod. And therefore, this adolescence we're talking about today is everybody's responsibility. The school, the student, and the home, and the family. So we all need to, all hands need to be on deck. In February 2021, this is another student. I called 911 twice in the span of 2 weeks. I thought I was dying. I felt confused, felt like my body was about to give way. So, this thing we're talking about today, this issue we're talking about today, affects students in different ways. And that's why we need to be extremely alert to ensure that we identify. And mental wellness, unwellness that we sometimes see as a stigma, it's like any other illness. I learned that from a forum I attended. It's like any other illness. When you have malaria, people don't attach any stigma to it. If you have a cough and cold like I have now, nobody attaches any stigma, except when COVID-19 came, and then that became another stigma. So it's a societal thing, and we need to not be ostriches about these matters and bury our heads in the sand, but to face the reality of where we are now. The World Health Organization has revealed that Nigeria has the highest, and one of the downsides of mental unwellness is suicide, as we all know. And the World Health Organization has revealed that Nigeria has the highest suicidal rate amongst African countries. That was stated in 2016, with over 17,000 lives lost to suicide. We might not be aware, but these things are there. They're becoming more prevalent. And because of social media, because we hear the news more, the news is being more widespread, we are beginning to hear. But these things have always been there. But the unfortunate thing also is that the overall suicide rate increased to 30%, by 30%, between 2000 and 2020. And 2020, we remember, was the beginning of the pandemic. The pandemic has added another layer of mental unwellness, not only to adolescents, to the teachers who are even standing in front of the students in class. What do we know about the mental state of such teachers? And therefore, shouldn't we be paying attention to all of these things? So a myriad of factors that have enhanced the spikes in statistics. Most recent, like I said, is the COVID-19 pandemic, which robbed adolescents of social interaction. They thrive on social interaction. which underpins their development, and this was taken away during those periods. And I remember that post the lockdown, when we started physical classes, hybrid classes in my school, for example, getting students to come to assembly, and I was discussing with the principal of Olashiri this morning that they lock their door at 8 a.m. on the dot so that everybody can start. Yes, we're educators, we must be timekeepers. But getting students to attend social events, communal events, became a challenge. We were chasing them all around the school. It's time for assembly, it's time for motivational talk, go to. And I had a meeting one day with my SRC, the Students Representative Council, and I asked them, what's going on with your colleagues? Why are we chasing you to attend social events? And one of them turned around and said, Dr. Musa, you seem to have forgotten that we've been behind our screens for so long. And we're just coming out of that era. And therefore, we're not used to interacting with each other. We're not used to social platforms. They lost going out to meet with friends at eateries and places like that. And these are the things that we need to be mindful. We need to be kind in our understanding of the mental state of the students, of the adolescents. We come across in the family, we come across in our respective schools. So we need to be very observant, like I said, with a positive mindset to help. See something, say something, as I said at the beginning, because early detection would help tremendously and will reduce the journey to the point whereby people are walking the streets. And I was sharing this morning that in times past, driving from GRA, Danbach, Anthony Way on my way home, I hardly saw anybody on the streets. But these days, recently, I've seen more people. Some are just lying on the street, sleeping. Some are sitting on statue bases. And these are people who are suffering from mental unwellness. And therefore, the statistics is increasing by the day. And we need to be alert. We need to do the needful. And that's why, please join me in applauding the OISA Foundation for this initiative. It's most needful, it's very, very needful, it's very, very trendy, and it's one that everybody should give support to. So if there's nothing anybody lives here with today, it must be that you are going to be part of the gospel of those who will demystify the stigma that's attached to mental unwellness. Because it could be you, it could be I. The line between the two is very thin. It's very, very thin, and it's easy to flip one way or the other. All it requires is some level of stress, and we all have different stressors. And therefore, this conversation today is one that's very needful. And I find that for us who run schools, the incidents we see now are quite mind-boggling. I heard about cutting, for example, only about 8 years ago. Before they had never heard about cutting. And again, this is a sign of stress, of mental unwellness, and trying to release. Students with suicidal tendencies, there's so much going on with the adolescents now. And we'll hear the various stressors from our speakers today. But what I want us to be mindful of, or to go out with today, is that we will see something, say something. We will see something, do something about it. We will give us all the support we can to anybody in our immediate environment. If you observe somebody whose character or whose behavior has suddenly changed, sometimes it's very little. It might be very little changes. Pay attention. Somebody who is not usually very angry responds to you in an angry manner. Find out what's going on, rather than just dismiss that person as being badly behaved. So at my school, for example, we've developed a mantra, which I added to our assembly, which the students collectively recite every morning. And this is just to help them, to give them that positive mindset. And it says, I call it the OTC lesson mantra. It says, I am strong. Everybody here today say, I'm strong. I am talented. I am healthy. I am valuable. I'm confident. I'm disciplined. I have a spirit of excellence. I am wonderfully and beautifully made. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ogunsoya. OISA is going to plagiarize that mantra and adopt it as well. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, our conference chairperson, Dr. Olufemi Ogunsoya, thank you so much for those very insightful analytics of data, information, and more importantly, the journey. The work ahead is still quite a lot, and I think it's fair to say that parents or guardians or anyone responsible for children in that bracket of 0 to, I don't know, maybe 18, 20, 25, if I can use that one, but primarily between 18 and below, we have become very accustomed to paying attention more to what our children say, what they do, how they respond, and we have been forced to adjust the way we interact with these adolescents, and that in itself, if I might say, is another it's another mental journey for guardians and parents. But the role of technology has also helped in terms of communicating, in terms of getting access to this information. A lot of these things, some say, have been happening for years. The knife cutting, the suicide, but because of social media, we get a chance to hear it as soon as it happens. The flip side of that is also that technology is at the forefront, or social media is at the forefront of some of the causes. So it's like a chicken and an egg thing. It's a solution, it's a way out, but it's also the cause. So it's really complicated and difficult, but unfortunately, this is the reality we're in. And the essence of this conference is to try to navigate that conundrum and that maze and find out where you play a role, how to play a role, how to identify these signs. And that is leading me to our first speaker this morning. Education is a very vital part in the fight or the war against mental wellness. And the education, not just within the confines of an academic institution, but education in terms of learning, in terms of information, and in terms of knowing how to solve the problems. We have our first speaker who is very grounded in this, very experienced in this, and she is basically honing in on our theme for this year, which is mental health and well-being for all, leaving no adolescent behind. I mentioned earlier on that our first speaker, that is Dr. Veronica Oluyemisi Inyamali, is a consultant psychiatrist and psychiatric rehabilitation expert. For those who have the brochure, those online, it has been shared with you as well in the chat room. Please feel free to go through her profile, but I just wanted to just highlight some of the work that she has been doing and is still doing. So she's a consultant psychiatrist at the Psychiatric Rehabilitation Unit of the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Yaba, popularly known as Yaba Left. She has 20 years of working. In fact, that name in itself is another form of stigma that needs to be demystified. It's not a bad place to go. It's actually a haven where problems are being solved. She has over 20 years of working experience in the field of mental health and has been involved in the training of resident doctors in psychiatry for about 19. She's a graduate of Obafemi University, Ileife, Osun State. She is a US certified psychiatric rehabilitation practitioner. And it's very interesting to note that once there is a problem, you've identified it, where do people go? Who do they talk to? And those they talk to, do they understand what they're going through? So it's very key to have the solution also ready at hand. She is an addiction specialist with international credential, ICAP1, I'll pretend like I know what that means, and is highly involved in the treatment of all types of addiction. The accolades and of course the qualifications go on and on, but the core of what she represents is what we are talking about this year, and we are so glad and so happy, privileged and honored to have her deliver her first paper. Ladies and gentlemen, please do make welcome Dr. Veronica Oluyemisi Inyamali.
Let me say very quickly that it's really nice talking to the public. This is actually mental health advocacy. And working in the field of mental health, I have learned over time that we'll achieve a lot as psychiatrists, talking to people, preventing mental health issues, promoting mental well-being, rather than sitting in our hospitals and clinics, seeing people one-on-one and attending to issues when it is already too late. Especially because most times when it comes to mental health issues, people tend to come to the hospital last. It's usually spiritualized. People don't want to come there. There's also stigma. And they come in when the problems are already well established. And so, it's a good one standing here in front of you and talking about this. Mental well-being for all, leaving no adolescent behind. A very tough one. But it's good to start from somewhere, and then we'll keep running. We'll keep. So, I have for us there an outline. The outline. Okay. Taking us through what mental health is, who is an adolescent, peculiarities of adolescents, mental health problems in adolescents. Of course, we cannot cover all in 30 minutes. Causes of mental health problems, what we need to look for as parents, what we need to look for as teachers, the role of government, action point for school, because this is a school program. We're invited here because of the school, and then conclusion and references. Next slide, please. What is mental health? As we can see displayed there, the WHO, World Health Organization, defined mental health as a state of well-being. It's a state. That means it is not just a point. We are all oscillating, like in a line. So you have a side that is maybe 0% and another side 100%. So we try to emphasize that people should try to get optimum mental health, the best you can. Because you can't claim to have 100% of mental wellness. You cannot. But there are 4 points we look at to say that somebody has good mental health. There are 4 criteria we need to look at. The first one is understanding your potentials, your uniqueness, and being able to fulfill it. You see, I'll talk generally, because when we are talking about adolescent mental health, they are still children, growing. That period of adolescence is a process, and they are usually taken care of by adults. These adults themselves need to be mentally well to a reasonable level, because out of your fullness, out of your cup, you pour onto them. So I'm referring to adults now, but this same definition also applies for children. Realizing your full potential, being able to cope with the normal stresses of life. And in our Nigeria today, we see what is going on. In the world today, Africa, globally, we see the issues that are going on. Working productively, being relevant, and you're also happy with yourself. You are satisfied that you are contributing, and then participating meaningfully in the community. So for the adolescent child, this also plays out. fulfilling their potential. Somebody may not be good in mathematics. The child has come to school. The child is very good in ballet or sports or music. And the child has the space to express this. Children have stresses. We just passed through a pandemic, so we are in the post-pandemic period, if we can say that. The children went through a lot. School was taken away from them. When you take away school from children, you've taken away everything. They have a lot of energy. They want to play. It's not only about academics, reading books. They want to play. They need space. They have that energy. But when they don't have that and they are caged in the midst of adults that are stressed, they also go through some kind of stresses. Now, working productively, doing the bits they can, of course, age appropriate in this case, and then being able to make a difference in their own little way in the community or the home where they live. So this is still showing the same thing. I don't want to take our time on that. Now, when we talk about mental health, when you have all these 4 components, so many things happen around you determines how you feel. We expect your feeling to be normal. But when it is distorted, there is a problem. Your thinking processes, they are expected to be normal. That's the next slide, please. Next slide. Your thinking processes are expected to be normal, not faulty. Behavior expected to be normal, and functioning covering various domains: personal care functioning, family and household, educational, occupational, broader social context, and so on and so forth. Now, why are we here talking about children and adolescents? Why? It is important because 1/3 of them form the world population. Children are more in Africa or low and middle income countries, where about 90% of them live. They form up to 50% in most African countries. Now in Nigeria, 52.8% are below the age of 18. 59% aged 6 to 12 attend primary school. 49% aged 13 to 18 attend secondary school. This tells us that a certain percentage is out of school. You know, when I started, I said leaving no adolescent behind is a tough one, but it's good to keep the conversation going. Because what we are talking about here, we're actually addressing those ones that are in school. But we'll get back to that. Now, 75% of most adult mental health issues start before the age of 14. So imagine if they are picked up early and they are followed up. 1 out of 5 will experience a mental health challenge before the age of 18. Now, youths are the greatest wealth of a nation. When we put all these things together, you will understand why it is important to gather here to have this discussion. When it comes to child and adolescent mental health, it is serious collaboration, multidisciplinary. The mental health workforce alone cannot do it. Remember, it is not all psychiatrists that are in that field. There are other fields of psychiatry. Few of them are in core child and adolescent psychiatry, and they are few. And every day, people keep leaving Nigeria. They keep leaving. Doctors are leaving, psychiatrists are leaving, child and adolescent psychiatrists, they're leaving, psychologists are leaving. The people that should do the work, they are leaving. But we'll still continue with what we need to do. When I say collaboration, it is not only with people in the hospital, but others, teachers, parents. We just need to do this together. So who is an adolescent? I think the earlier speakers already mentioned it when we talk about who an adolescent is and what adolescent is. Adolescents are those between the ages of 10 to 19. And the period of adolescence, just as we can see there, is a period of transition from childhood to adulthood. A period where a lot of foundation is being laid. Is a process. Is a period where so many things are going on, and we have to follow the children through this. It also marks a significant period of brain development, psychological and physical development. Still focusing on who adolescents are, and then the various divisions: physical development, psychological development, social development, as we can see. During the period of physical development, of course, the brain continues growing. There is development of secondary sexual characteristics. Their body gets bigger, body organs and all that. Psychological development, of course, they start growing, and the issue of who they are comes into play. Who am I? The parents have taught them, schools have taught them, and then at this stage, they ask themselves, who am I? Who do I want to be? They ask so many questions. Are we there to answer? What are we telling them? Then, of course, emotional regulation. Now, social development is about relationship. In school, at home, in school with other colleagues, in school with teachers, and at home with everyone, their parents and others in the neighborhood. And then social cognition and all of that. So when we talk about peculiarities of adolescence, what are we looking at? Biological, we look at brain development. The forebrain is the part that is responsible for, I'm sure we can see some of these things. Control, judgment, decision-making, executive functions are not well developed. And this explains the reason why some of those adolescents, when they start taking substance, for example, they find it difficult to stop, because that part of their brain that can make them make that right judgment is not yet developed. An adult can say, okay, no more to drug use. I'm not going there again. But for them, it's difficult. They just continue on and on, especially if they don't get help. Then the hindbrain also develops, and it determines behavior. It is the seat of impulsivity. At the same time as these things are going on, we have hormones in play. The growth hormones, the sexual hormones, all having their toll on their body. And the body structure, functioning, getting bigger. They are getting bigger. They want to function more. They want to explore. They are seeing their body changing, and so on and so forth. Other things under psychosocial. What is usually common with adolescents? They are impulsive. We need to understand this. They are sensitive. And then they want to learn new things and discover new things. They are asking a lot of questions. You are answering them. They may not feel satisfied. They want more because other people are talking to them. They are on internet. They have the freedom now. There was a time we used to take the phones away from them. I remember my son laughing at me. Mommy, there was a time you used to take your phone from me. But now my work is in the phone. It's there. I have to go there now. So you can imagine they have access. But we just try as much as possible to control it. And then the issue of self-identity. When they don't get it right, there is confusion. That's the truth. Especially now, when so many things are trendy. I want to be a boy. I want to be a girl. There are so many issues, but let me leave that for now. Then intimacy seeking, relationship. They want to explore. They want to know what's there. And then you can also determine the scope, especially if they don't open up. And then peer pressure, peer influence. They listen more to their friends. At this time, there is a bit of authority rejection. And then, of course, social independence. It may be about this time that some of them may have to leave home and go to school. The school may be a boarding school. So they are leaving their parents. They are going to a new environment. So parent teachers. And that's why we need to do a lot of collaboration. So mental health problems in adolescence, really the way we put it is, you can only escape not having mental illness if you don't have a brain. Yes, once you have a brain, you are prone. You have the potential to be mentally ill. Nobody can escape it if you don't do the needful. So for adolescents too, they are not immune to mental health problems that are seen in adults. So as I said earlier, 75% of those problems start from childhood into adulthood. So the various mental health problems they can have, some have been highlighted, not all. Emotional problems, psychological problems, or issues. You know, when you are speaking English, people feel better. People don't like to see us. They prefer to see the psychologists, the school counselors. But when you say psychiatrists, then the stigma comes. So when you say disorder, so we're careful to use disorder, but most times we sit down with disorder rather than illness. Because when you say illness, it is as if it is very, very bad. Something needs to be done. But when you say disorder, it looks like it can still be corrected. There's a problem, it can be corrected. So many times we play around with these words so people will feel very, very comfortable with us. So they can have anxiety disorders, mood disorders, and the most common is depression. The most common mood disorders is depression. Many more children during the adolescent period will suffer from depression more than any other. Now, suicide is another one, which can follow depression if it is not taken care of on time, or it can be on its own. Now, when there is suicide for the adolescents, you want to look around what is going on with that person. Is there a major mental illness? Usually there are psychosocial issues too. Poverty, family issues, so many things. You want to know exactly what is, but most times when we do our assessment, whatever the issues are, it used to come up and become clear. And then of course, psychotic disorders, when it gets bad and they don't come on time. Substance use can also predispose to psychotic disorders. Eating disorders, among others, addiction, gambling disorders, all sorts of addiction are on now. Internet addiction, porn, some of them watch porn, and then masturbation, gender identity issues, or disorder, however we want to put it. We can go on and on and on, but there are many. So mental health problems in adolescents, some of them are disabilities from childhood and developmental disorders. So from when the child was small, they would have noticed that, okay, there is a problem, there is a delay in the developmental milestones. So you have things like disorders on the spectrum, the autism spectrum disorders, the intellectual disability in syndromes like Down syndrome, of course, cerebral palsy, ADHD, and so on and so forth. Now, when we look at adolescent mental health problems, what are the things that lead to it? Biological, it may be familial. Genetics, there may be a family history, in which case the adolescent inherited the traits from the parents. But you know, mental health or mental well-being is all about life. When life is generally good, somebody may have a natural predisposition, but will not come down with mental illness. It's when things are tough that your vulnerabilities come up. Then it can also be due to abnormal brain development, various endocrinopathies, autoimmune diseases, congenital malformations, and so on. It can be psychological, when the child grows up with insecure attachments and the child becomes a bit anxious, avoids people, becomes somewhat disorganized. And then when we are talking about psychological causes of adolescent mental health problems, we look at learning theories. They learn from us. Do as I do, not as I say. Children learn by observation most times. And that's why as adults, we ourselves, we need to be mentally balanced and strong. Wherever they are, in the neighborhood, religious setting, schools, at home, they look up to adults and they learn from adults. Are we role modeling for them? Daddy, are you smoking? Are you drinking? What exactly are you doing? What is happening in that house or in our home environment? What are we allowing? Are we too permissive? And then they take it out. Adverse childhood events. Life is good generally, but it's also good to live through the childhood period, the adolescent period, nicely, not full of trauma. Because a child exposed to childhood adolescent trauma, he has a predisposition to making them become mentally ill as adults if those issues are not trashed out on time. So when we talk about adverse childhood events, there are many as displayed. I'm sure you can see them there. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, emotional abuse, bullying, and so on. And then parenting styles. Are we there for our children? Are we involved? Anything about children is about knowing them. Know your child. Teachers, they've sent the children to school. So you've taken that, what do you call it now? Is it duty of care? In the hospital, we use duty of care when they're on admission with us. So in the hospital, I don't know whether the same term. In the school, I don't know whether the same term is used. It's the same. So they have come to school because the only way that you will identify that there is a problem is when you know the child very well. So the slightest deviation from normal, you start suspecting that something may be going on here. I know that in school, teachers, by virtue of their training, they arrange the children in a certain way in school. They know who should stay close to the teachers. They know who should stay in a particular place. Maybe somebody is using glasses. They know where to put who. They know who should be by their side here. You know, they have all those information. So the same thing goes here, knowing the child very well so that when there is a little deviation, you do the needful. So back to parenting style, because these same teachers are also parents. So you play double roles when you are a teacher. Because somebody may also be living with, an adolescent may be living with you at home, or even your own child. So you are playing two roles. You are a parent, you are a teacher. But when you are uninvolved, you don't care concerning the issues of the child, there is likely to be a problem. Or you are too permissive. You allow everything. Your 12-year-old can go for a party, can follow the auntie to go for a party at 9 p.m. It's fine. Or you are authoritarian. You give instruction, do this, go here. There is no negotiation, no trying to explain for the child to understand your stand. You are not, because children have a voice. We need to listen to them. We need to understand their viewpoint and explain things to them. Age-appropriate information so they can understand. But when we use the wrong parenting styles, it can predispose them into having adolescent mental health problems. There can also be social causes, dysfunctional family settings, toxic school environment, bullying, peer pressure, cultism, broader unhealthy environments, availability of psychoactive substances, which are everywhere now, gambling. Before now, when they talk about use of substance, the impression is usually that, okay, maybe your child, there is a problem, he has bad friends and all that. He has joined a cult. But today, the substances are everywhere. Children from good homes, they're exposed. And when they come to see us in the clinic, you see the parents asking us questions, how, when, where? And now the age of onset for substance use is now as low as 9, 10 years. And then, of course, the global environment, internet, cable, and all that, they are exposed to all of these. So what do we look out for at home? We can see all of them there. Some are withdrawn, they are quiet, they lose interest in play and other things they used to enjoy. They avoid you as if they have something they are keeping. They are preoccupied with something you don't know, but you'll observe if you know your child and you make inquiries. Emotional dysregulation, throwing of having tantrums. And then when we look at the school plays a major role because the focus now is not about academics, it's about making it broad-based for them to pick everything that needs to be learned from school, mental health literacy and all of that. But what do we look out in these children in school? Attention span. You need to be attentive to a reasonable level for you to learn in school and perform well. Academic performance, when there are issues, that starts dropping. So that can also be a red flag that something is happening to the child. Then, of course, interpersonal relationships, making friends, maintaining relationship with teachers and students, participating in teamwork, because some of them may want to be withdrawn or even stand aloof and not communicating or even having problems with communication. How do we want to improve this? We can see all this displayed there. Healthy parenting, supportive home environments, physical presence, being emotionally involved. That's all these things that I've talked about. Peaceful coexistence, and then reaching out for help on time. You may not be the solution, but you can be the link to the solution. Improving adolescent mental health. We can see all of this. I need to run through because they've given me time that I need to start concluding. Improving adolescent mental health, the role of schools. What are we supposed to be doing? We identify, we manage, and we sustain progress. And there is a lot of talk now around integrating mental health care into physical. So each school should have a school program for health. You won't separate the one of mental health. Everything is together to achieve those bullets in green. I'm sure we can see all of that. There is no way you talk about mental health that you don't talk about stigma. An adult may understand why you don't stigmatize the mentally ill. But when it happens in school, other children may start laughing at the child. Or somebody can start having seizures in school and everybody will run away because the children have wrong impression about what is going on. Or they feel it is contagious and everybody runs away and leaves the child. But with age-appropriate information, mental health literacy, everybody knows what to do. There is decreased stigma. Improving adolescent mental health, still on role of schools. It's usually at different levels. Comprehensive tiered services within the school. Collaborative partnership that I talked about. Working together with the members of the mental health team and the school team, having a combination in school. And then generally, having a program that everyone will benefit from, not only those that are at risk. Remember what I said earlier. When life is generally good, mental health issues will not come. Talking about simple things like good road, there is water, there is electricity. In my school, there is always light 24/7. The environment is good, good ventilation, AC. All those things help. Good ambience in school. All those things make a lot of difference when it comes to mental health care. Second tier, of course, mental health services for students at risk. those in school, there should be a program in school, how the child can access help. And the scope can be determined by the school. And of course, we expect that there will be reviews over time. And then the third one is when you now have on-site mental health treatment, depending on what the school can afford. In Nigeria, what do we have? There is an existing school health policy. I don't know how many schools are aware that this has been existing, because generally there is poor awareness. Then for schools that are aware, implementation is poor. So the policy also lacks robust mental health components. We keep working on this all the time. People in child and adolescent psychiatry, they keep working on this all the time. Now, researchers and clinicians have been doing a lot over the years to make this work. Highlighted below, where I wrote role of researchers, we'll see some of the things they have been doing. Now, identifying the common mental health problems and needs of children in school, training teachers for them to be able to identify and refer promptly. Mental health literacy program, training, which should be from time, at least a teacher should go for a training in 3 years, at least, when it comes to mental health. Now, piloting various intervention strategies. But generally speaking, we are still not there. A lot more still needs to be done. And then, of course, we talk about children. So we talk about the role of government in terms of school mental health laws and policies, establishing, developing, funding, regular training for school owners and teachers. If we look at northern Nigeria, for example, we look at all these Amajiri children, they are out of school. When we say leaving no adolescent behind, what about them? The people in school may not be able to take care of them, but the government has a role to play. They can do a lot. So action point for school, because the chairperson of this foundation, Mrs. Shopowora, insisted that I should come with action points. And these are the points. I've tried to compress them so that it won't be too bulky. But if you don't remember anything I've said here today, please, schools, this is just the way to go. One, it's not about knowing that the mental health policy document exists. We should have it written. When it is written, you bring it alive. And then you design how you want to use it. You take into consideration the developmental stage of each child, sociocultural background. And then the school mental health policy should be in keeping as spelled out by the Child Rights Act. And you also include those with disabilities. Please take note. The design and implementation should be in pyramid form, where the base of the pyramid is the area where most focus should be on in school in terms of engaging those children positively, investing in social and physical environments of the school. It does a lot. The school ambience, the neatness, nature, space for children, engaging them when they are in school, not that they are running out or they are jumping out of the school environment. And then curriculum-based mental health literacy initiative. Before now, we talk about school curriculum and extra curriculum. Extra means not part of the school curriculum. But the information, the awareness is better now, because now they call them co-curriculum. It is equally important. It should be part of the school program. So you have co-curriculum-based mental health literacy initiative. And then, of course, you discover things in school. It doesn't end there. The child came from a home. You collaborate with the home, with the community. So I was talking about the pyramid. At the base of the pyramid, the school does all this. But the middle part of the pyramid is a lot of training on social skills, life skill training, targeted risk factor reduction, accommodating those with disabilities, while at the top of the pyramid, they are mainly intervention efforts. Now, the next is mental health promotion. There are a lot of them. I just put a few of them here. Mental health promotion in school. Keeping them in school, they must be there. They must not run out. And you know they are full of energy. They want to do everything. So you don't just keep them in school and leave them there. You engage them. Bring so many activities. And then, of course, you mitigate truancy and dropping out of school. Improving school engagement through physically aesthetic school environment. Suicide prevention strategies. When you talk about strategies in school, it's about picking it up early. What is going on with this child? Why is this child withdrawn? Why is this child quiet? Why is this child shedding tears? There will always be telltale signs for you to know that something is going on. So there should be clear lines on what to do and how to prevent some of these things from going on. And when they're identified, we'll do the needful. Ensuring safe environments by raising awareness and having clear policy for ensuring protection when it comes to bullying, intimidation, victimization, and so on and so forth. Other action points, the school needs to focus on other things that directly affect brain health, nutrition, physical exercise. In some schools, they give them food. What kind of food are you giving them? Is it balanced? Is it rich? And it's not to say that because the parents are paying money and they have money, you also give them things that are not nutritious, but that they like. There needs to be a balance. Of course, physical exercise is supposed to be part of the school curriculum. Then teachers' well-being, support, and professional development. When we talk about this school mental health guide, it is not only about the teachers. Remember, I said it earlier, that from your fullness, you pour on to these children. The teachers themselves need to be happy and radiate happiness to their students. When you are happy, you can't hold it. It has a way of getting to other people around you. For them to be kind, in school, we need to address their well-being. We need to support them. And then, of course, their professional development. I won't say that in the school policy guide, we're talking about finances here, no. But a school can have a program where there is a place or there is someone in school the teacher can go to when there are concerns. Or you do something about the teacher's welfare, accommodation, transportation. Maybe there is a school bus that brings the teachers to school. Something like that can make life better. It goes a long way, especially in this present day Nigeria, where everybody goes through a lot. So for the teacher that is coming to teach, you need to come with that composure, radiating that goodness and happiness and joy, so that when your students see you, they are confident that, oh, our teacher has come to give us the best again today. Other things include clear policy on reduction of school-based disabilities. How? Priority areas as displayed. Integration of stigma reduction strategies. Very, very important. Facilitation of establishments of in-school support programs for students with incapacitating mental health problems. You see now, a lot of focus is on putting even children with intellectual disabilities in normal schools and giving them the needed support where they are. The needed learning aid, one-on-one, everything they need in that school, rather than putting them in this other school. In fact, some parents don't want that. They don't want that. But the training now is a lot more around giving them the needed support wherever they are. And then inclusive learning support for children with neurodevelopmental disorders and other related disabilities. And of course, I mentioned something on this earlier. Each school should have a school health committee to adapt the policy to the school culture and monitor the implementation and evaluation of the policy. So what worked for Olashere may not, you can't just take that and apply it to another school. You can just adapt based on what you have. And then committee members should include the representative of the school admin, school representative, student representative, parents teacher representative, a teacher, and a school health professional if available. Of course, the school would determine the number of people they want to be in this team. But the essence is just that for these ones, regular training and information needs to be passed down to this group of people. So in conclusion, let me conclude by saying the period of adolescence is a very important time. The foundation laying period of adolescence, it's a process. We need to follow these children, the adolescents, and listen to them and support them as much as possible, wherever they may be, to prevent them from coming down with adult mental illness. Thank you very much.
Okay. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you very much for that, Ma. So much to say. It was very loaded and a lot to think about. I think every year for me, I'm always learning something new and makes whatever you knew last year kind of obsolete. So once again, Dr. Yamali, thank you so much. A round of applause to her, ladies and gentlemen. So our next paper to be delivered is on mental health and well-being for all, inclusion of children, adolescents with learning disabilities and challenges. We had Dr. Nyamali touched on this briefly in terms of how to address this when it comes to schools and also the psychology and training that is required to do that. But I will quickly have a quick rundown on the bio of our speaker, who is unavoidably absent, but is ably represented. So Dr. Yinka Akindayomi is the founder, Children's Development Center, Lagos, and has over 30 years experience in the development, supervision, fundraising, and management of service provision for families raising children with special needs. For parents who have children with special needs, their journey, their experience is a completely different path. And it deserves as much attention as well. And that's why OISA decided to shed light on this aspect as well. Dr. Akindayomi acts as an associate lecturer at the Institute of Child Health and Primary Care, College of Medicine at the University of Lagos and Lagos State University Teaching Hospital. She is a recipient of the Rare Gem Award recognized by UNICEF, UNIFEM, UNFPAA, UNIC, and UNDP, basically all the awards that have UN in there, as well as Service of Humanity Award from the Lagos State Government and several other awards. We're delighted to have her here with us, and her paper will be delivered by Dr. Matilda Kerry Osazua. She is an autism mom, a consultant public health doctor specializing in maternal and child health. She supports CDC's child development and mental health programs, and it is a privilege and honor to have her represent Dr. Akindayomi. Please, ladies and gentlemen, do make welcome Dr. Kerry Osazua to deliver the second paper.
Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be here. Dr. Akindayomi is really gutted that she couldn't be here today. She's unavoidably absent, but she's asked me to speak on her behalf, and I hope I will be able to just live up to that. She's been a mentor of mine for the past 5 years. I've known her longer, but I've really just begun to engage with her after she diagnosed my son. So I've been working with the CDC since then, and I've really come to understand that there's a huge gap in Nigeria when it comes to inclusion of persons with disabilities, even a struggle globally. But here at home, we're trying to do what we can. So I'll just jump right into the presentation. We're speaking about learning disabilities. So just to let you know what you're going to learn today, a little bit of a disclaimer about what exactly we're going to communicate with you today. So we're going to learn about learning disabilities in children and adolescents. How do we identify a child that has a learning disability? And then what are we going to do about it? At the end of this, short presentation, you're just going to have a higher level of awareness and knowledge. So this in no way makes you an expert. We do not expect you to begin to make spot diagnosis, as we would call it in medicine. You see a symptom here, symptom there, and then you start to label a child or an adolescent. We just want you to be more aware about the existence of these disabilities and what to do if you do encounter them, and to be more disability friendly, and to also become an advocate for disability in Nigeria, because we need a lot of advocacy in this regard. Next slide. Just to throw this out there, I hope I will get some responses, but who do we feel are children that have learning disabilities? And anyone can actually volunteer to answer that, or I will call someone out. Who do you feel has a learning disability? How would you define it?
Hello. Okay, so I will help you out with those physically here, and those online can also answer, and I can read out. For those of you online, if you have an answer, please also type it in the chat room. So who should I attack? I mean, sorry.
Okay.
Oluwatosin Balogun from Corona Schools, Just Cancel. And I think when we talk about learning challenge or disability, they are children that cannot learn the conventional way other children learn. Example, dyslexia, autism, Down syndrome, that might not be able to cope in a natural or normal environment when other children will just do the group thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please, let's applaud her. No right or wrong answer in this room. We're just sharing.
I have a couple online. Do you mind if I pick that up? Okay, so this is from Olukemi Onobanjo. Says children with learning skills that are below the norm of their age and class. Judith says children that are unable to achieve academically. Adedoja says children who have delayed developmental posts due to, wow, the messages are coming in, due to one learning problem or another. Yemi says inability to understand or learn in normal ways, e.g. autism.
All right, can we just stop right there? Okay, so there's something
I was going to say we could go on and on.
There's something I've been picking up, which is what we usually pick up, and that's the use of the word normal. We as educators, as parents, and as advocates for mental health and disability rights, we have to be very careful about the language we use in this space. What is normal? Okay. Everyone is normal. Every child is normal. And using that word normal just makes you think of the other side of it, which is abnormal. So instead of using a word like that, there are other ways that you can describe children that have learning disability. So let's just be a little bit more progressive in our language. You can say a child who has difficulty learning and a child who does not have difficulty learning, or a child who has a disability and a child who doesn't have a disability. But we'll go on and look at some of our definitions and see, but let's just be a little bit more cautious and sensitive as we explore deeper in this space. Now, in different countries, usually we see different definitions of what learning disabilities are. We're just talking about what we hear even being used by professionals. And I'm talking about teachers, parents, and sometimes even us doctors. So in US, they usually use learning disabilities to describe specific learning challenges, such as dyslexia, as this lady had pointed out. In the United Kingdom, usually it means a developmental challenge with associated learning difficulties. And then in Nigeria, usually the first thing we hear is, oh, the child is slow. Like, what is slow? Like, is it like slow motion or what? I really don't get it. Sometimes they even use more derogatory terms like, you know, child is a moron, imbecile, stupid. And we really have to be cautious as teachers when we try and communicate the fact that a child or an adolescent has a learning disability. You're talking to the parent of this child that has brought their child to the school to learn, and then you're trying to let them know that there's a challenge. So in your conversations, you must be very sensitive. You let the parent know that this child has a difficulty, but you have identified it. We'll go deeper into that, but you should be very cautious about the terms and the words that you're using. So avoid the use of, oh, your child is not learning normally, or your child is not able to learn in this class. And then as a school, you should also be able to provide the solution. So you're not coming to give the parent more problems and then not being able to tell the parent what to do, because that parent gets frustrated, goes home, and then takes it out on the child who you've told them is stupid. Okay, so we have to be very careful with that. Now, there are two things we want to look at: learning disabilities and intellectual disabilities. They are different things. Now, when we talk about the learning disabilities, the cognitive abilities may be spared. And when we talk about cognition, we talk about things like understanding concepts. And then other developmental milestones may not be delayed. Things like maybe the fine and the gross motor skills, things like socialization, behavior, those things are still preserved in children that have only learning disabilities. But once intellectual disabilities are, we're speaking about intellectual disabilities, there are other milestones that may be affected, and we'll see a little bit more about that. So you may identify a child has a learning disability, and then exploring deeper, you may see that there are also other delays around this child or this adolescent. So you should be also very high wired to identify those other delays and be able to support the child. For example, you may have a child who has autism in your class. So he has a learning disability, and he also has an intellectual disability. So he's not able to socialize properly, has behavior problems, and then he's not able to understand a lot of verbal communication. So that makes it difficult for him to learn English, maths. He can't understand the instructions they're giving him. So definitely we'll have a learning disability. And you should be able to identify all those difficulties that that child is experiencing and be able to bring in some support. Next slide. All right, so these are the 8 main types of disabilities. Just for your knowledge, we have the mobility and physical. A child may be born without a limb. A child may suffer from diseases like polio and become paralyzed. You can have children that are born with hearing disabilities or develop them along the way because of some infection or some drug they were introduced to early in age. You have the spinal cord nervous system disabilities, cognitive and learning disabilities. They may have experienced some head injuries, just psychological ones, visual ones, and then we have some invisible disabilities that we have not even been able to name, but we know that this child has some delay. How do we detect learning disabilities? Now, as a teacher, like I said, you should be able to identify when a child is struggling and with what they're struggling with, but it's not your job to diagnose that child or to label that child. You should be able to connect that family, talking about the parents, with the experts that needs to make the diagnosis, and then be able to work with the expert, with the child, with the parents, and with all the resources in your school to enable that child to learn in that environment. So we're not asking you to diagnose the child, but then just to be able to identify the symptoms. Next slide. All right, so most learning disabilities are identified in school. You may have children that are reversing letters. They have problems with words and letters. They're not able to put them together, or they're reading them backwards. You may have children that have problems recognizing patterns, difficulties understanding instructions. So whatever it is you identify, you should already be having clues as to, what you need to do as a school to support this child. I think that's where we are really lacking in strength in a lot of Nigerian schools. And it's been a struggle for me because I have a 7-year-old who's on the autism spectrum, diagnosed at 3. And it's been a struggle to find a school that supports him. So we're talking about inclusive schools in the real term, not being able to accommodate children with disabilities in your school. Anybody can do that. But are you able to create an enabling environment for that child to learn within your schools? In most cases, the answer is no. And I've had to become almost like the Iron Man of inclusion for my son's school, just to be able to get him to a point that he's learning in class. And it was a struggle because my son is a visual learner. If you do not present information in pictures, he's not going to get it. You can talk to him from now till tomorrow and say those words over and over again. He may cram it and say it back, but he's not going to understand the concept. So I really had to delve deep into my school, my son's school, and I really love them. They're very open, very flexible, but also stuck in their ways, right? So we have to start our schools. I think if there's a message that you take from here, is to become more inclusive in the real sense. And how do we do this? It looks like something difficult, but it's really quite easy. Recognize that children and adolescents have different ways of learning. Let's take disability out of the room. We have those that are visual learners. We have those that are auditory learners. We have those that are kinesthetic learners. Visual learners learn by seeing. What they see, they absorb, they understand. Most of us here are auditory learners. I've been rambling on, and I think a huge percentage of the room understands what I'm saying because I've seen some nods and I know that we are getting carried along. But if there was a person with autism in this room, they'll probably just have zoned out long time ago, especially if I don't have a lot of interesting visuals for them to be captured because most autistic people are visual learners. And then they're kind of static learners. If they don't touch, if they don't feel, if they don't do, they haven't learned, they can't learn. Now, when you as a school owner understand there are generally 3 ways that children and adolescents learn, you then have to upgrade your classroom to be able to cater for those 3 types of learners. You have to educate and train your teachers to be able to develop resources for those 3 types of learners. You have to be able to enhance your curriculum to be able to cater to those types of learners, right? From the point of getting that child in the class, assessing that child's abilities, and then when you've taught, even the examinations, to be able to present exams in those 3 different ways and assess that this child has learned. Oh, it's too much work. How am I ever going to do this? There's support out there. There are actual organizations like the Children Developmental Center that can support schools to develop these curriculums, to get these instructions in place, and then to become self-sufficient so that you're able to do it internally. You may have to have some additional funding and some additional expenditure, probably in the first year, until you really get into the art of what we call universal design learning, meaning anybody can learn in that class. But it's definitely worth doing. And my son's school, they're really forging forward. They've had a few more admissions, children with disabilities that have come into the school, and they're able to just settle them down after the first few weeks. So it's been a win-win. And I think more schools should be able to do this. And the Lagos State government is also getting very involved in inclusion matters, especially the Ministry of Education and the State Universal Basic Education Board. So before we get to that point where it becomes mandatory, we should start sharpening our iron and getting things in place, because it's definitely coming as long as I'm around and doing advocacy. So let's leave that for now. So next slide, please. All right, so the children with learning disorders feel frustrated. Now, they feel frustrated because they are not able to communicate and they do not understand why others are following and they are not following. So it's very frustrating for them to be in a class from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. Everybody's having fun, answering questions, and they just don't get it. So they get frustrated. And then we also know that a lot of children with disabilities also have attention deficit disorder. You cannot expect a child or an adolescent that has a learning disability to sit rigid in a classroom from the beginning of the day to end of the day. Maybe there's a break in the afternoon or when they have their snack or lunch and then go to the playground 30 minutes. Apart from that, you are supposed to be sitting at your desk. That does not work for children with disabilities. Sitting arrangement needs to be flexible, and then you need to give a lot of sensory breaks or motion breaks for them to just move around. And then they need to have a lot of fidget toys and things around that they can distract themselves with. So your class, again, has to be modified to support them. So when they're not getting their needs met, one of them being that need for movement or, need for just some sensory satisfaction, or maybe they're not able to communicate what they need. You see them get frustrated, they throw tantrums, and then the next thing is that your child is a difficult child. That's what the parent gets. But then the problem is with the school, the teacher, the class, not understanding what that child needs. So behavior then comes out. Next slide. All right, we've spoken a lot about this frustration, and then let's look at the low self-esteem. Now, if a child is not able to do what the others are doing, there's no sense of achievement in that class, and then that child may develop, that may be the beginning of developing low self-esteem, which we want to avoid. And we want to try and support children not to go down that road. So if you have children in your class, you're already seeing high levels of frustration, behavioral issues, low self-esteem. They don't want to go to school, talking about the parents. Your child never wants to go to school. They always want to be at home. You need to now start thinking about what interventions need to come in for that child. Next slide. All right. There may also be other things that may be causing that child to have a learning disability. And things like visual loss, which may be partial. The child may just not be seeing the board. So you have a child that can't see what you are talking about. And then that child, because the child is difficult, you place that child at the back of the class, and then it's just a downward spiral from there. There may be some hearing loss. And then, like I said, there may be other intellectual disabilities. There may also be mental health problems. That child may have a lot of anxiety, the child may be depressed because of all these initial issues that haven't been managed. So we have to be on alert for as any other associated disorders. Next slide. All right, so we can go on and on, but if you are able to look at all those, dyslexia, the learning difficulty whereby the child has difficulty reading. There's dysgraphia, where the handwriting and written words and organization, there are issues with that. There's calcula, auditory processing disorders, ADHD. There are a lot of learning disabilities. But then again, what the message here is not to focus on knowing what those learning disabilities are, but to be able to take the necessary action as the school, as the teacher, and as the parent. Next slide. Let me not jump the gun. So what is the management? Like I said, starting with the family, I'd already mentioned that in the beginning. You've picked up that this child has a learning disability. The first point of call is to let the parents know, because you are not a doctor. You're not going to diagnose that child unless the child came in already with a working diagnosis. Like my son already came in and we knew he had autism and the school knew he had autism. But you then need to find out if the parent hadn't alerted you that there was something else going on with the child. You would need to have some kind of meeting with the parent, let them know your concerns, let them know if you feel that this child needs professional assessment to be able to tell where this child's strengths and challenge areas are and what we need to do. You can see the language I'm using. So your child has a learning difficulty. He has strengths here, but it seems to be reversing the words now. We need this child to go for further assessment so that we know where his strengths are, so we can get an intervention plan, so we can build an individualized learning plan for your child. There's no parent you speak to like that wouldn't, the next question will be, oh, where do I go? Who do I see and what do I do? So, and then you should already have those links. It's not then that you start saying, oh, go and see your doctor, we're not sure. You should already have all that set up from your end as a school. And then you support your parents in not becoming distraught, in knowing that there's some potential in the child. So as you're telling them the child's struggle, you also need to tell them something positive about that child. And there's always something positive in a child. You also let them know that most learning disabilities, and if there's an associated intellectual disability, is usually a lifelong challenge that needs to be managed. But you give them some encouragement in that they start the intervention early, build those skills in that child, then that child will be able to thrive. A lot of parents in Nigeria, we're very spiritual people, and it's wonderful to be spiritual, close to our God. No, I'm serious, because I'm on the altar every morning praying, kabashing, and doing all that I need to do. But then we have to take positive action as well. So you need to be that support for the parent. This is not some kind of possession. Your child is not cursed or anything. You can pray, but please, we need to do further assessment so we know what resources to develop for your son. We need to know how to create, his examinations and assess him and things like that. You always have to deal with that angle of things. So outcome is always good when there's early identification and intervention, and there's always proper monitoring and management. And the word is management, not treatment. All right, next slide. All right, so these are the following professionals. Usually when a child is going to be diagnosed with having a learning disability and to rule out other issues like intellectual disabilities, it's a multidisciplinary team that works to make that diagnosis. So if you're a parent or you are a school and you've been having this specialist that just does a diagnosis on their own, you need to be cautious, all right? Usually there's a lot that needs to be done. We talked about visual difficulties, hearing difficulties, so all those areas have to be assessed. There needs to be a neurologist who's going to check for possible damage to the child's brain. Maybe during birth, there was some, hypoxia and things like that. You need a pediatrician, usually a developmental pediatrician. And I'm just telling you straight up, Nigeria, we have very few. I think they're less than 10 in Nigeria, developmental pediatricians. The only one at Lut left just a month after my son was diagnosed. Maybe it was the last child that she diagnosed, and she's in the UK now. We're losing all our doctors. But you need a developmental pediatrician. Next slide. A psychiatrist, clinical psychologist. Next slide. Probably an audiologist if you're suspecting the child isn't hearing, an occupational therapist. Next slide. So you can see multidisciplinary from medical. And then from the support angle of things, you also need your school psychologists to be available for education, a speech and language therapist. Next slide. An educational consultant, an educational therapist. Some of these I've never seen in Nigeria. Next slide. And a learning disability specialist. Now, you don't need to have all these things, but you need to know that this child needs a diagnosis medically. It's usually multiple disciplinary team. And then you need to have your school team also set up, or the support in school set up. So I'll just describe what's going on with me and my son. So Brian has a lot of communication difficulties. He also has very poor socialization. And because of that, he has some behavioral issues when he doesn't get his needs met. So to tackle that, first thing, we got our diagnosis. We knew what we were working with. Second thing, we had to get the school in line. We did an intervention. We got an individualized education plan for him. We got a speech therapist involved. We had a behavioral therapist involved who visited the school and home to provide support. And then we also had the school, just engage in training, universal design learning, inclusive education, and dysregulation training. So the teachers are trained to manage children with learning and intellectual disabilities. And the school understands the concept of universal design learning. Now, if those are the only things you can achieve for your school, you will be able to help a lot of children who are currently struggling. Okay, I think the only issue is for other parents out there to be aware and to stop being in denial and also support the process. So how do we respond? We get help early, we get our children evaluated, know the strengths of the child, and then work as a team. It takes not just the school. Most parents, I would say in Nigeria, bring the child to school and expect the miracle to happen. So I've taken my child with a disability, I've put them in a mainstream school, and everything is going to normalize. No, it's not going to happen. Your eye has to be on that school, and you have to go with a very driving force. I don't know how many slides I have left, but I'll just leave you with this last story. So last term, Brian was, that's my son, Brian was bullied. Okay, I got to school and the whole school was in frenzy, and his friends rushed out for me. They love him because he goes against the rules. So he's defiant to the teachers. He's like the bravest child in class. Like he's the only one that can tell the teacher that I'll flog you or something like that. She says sit down and he's not sitting, and nothing happens to him. So the children really love him and they gravitate to me, and I also engage them because Brian is not very verbal and I want to know what's happening in the class. So one of his friends runs up to me and said, well, Brian was in the primary 6 class and they tied him to a chair and, they held him down. He was screaming. And I, my face was just really, what, are you serious? What happened? And then I got all the information I needed. So I got into administrative office. And I said, oh, what happened with Brian today? And immediately they tried to just sweep it under the carpet. Oh,
nothing happened. He just went to the primary 6 class, and the teacher came. I don't know, before the teacher came, what happened. But this is just advising schools. It doesn't pay to keep things like that.
And we see it a lot, bullying incidences, regardless of the child's ability. And then the school tries to sweep it under the carpet. So they continued that way. And then I said, oh, anyways, I've heard what happened, that it was tied down by, the other students. What is the school going to do about it? And so they've done, they've taken care of it. They've cautioned the teacher and they've scolded the children. And I said, no, that's not enough. You need to engage those children and their parents. Let the parents know that this is what your child did in school, and you need to take disciplinary action at home. Then as the school, you also have to engage those children in understanding that they're children with abilities and disabilities. Because what happened, he came into the class of a senior class and was defiant. They were telling him, don't touch this, don't do that, don't draw there. And he refused to answer anyone. And he's thought, oh, the only way we can control him is to tie him down, which was a very good thought process by the children, but they just went about it the wrong way. So they need to understand, oh, it's not being defiant. He just doesn't understand what you're trying to tell him. They need to know that. They need to know that children think differently. All children, and know how to go about it. But on this front, the school was not being cooperative with me. So I did not leave it there. I wrote a letter, a bullying complaint, bullet points that I wanted to see met. And I almost became like an enemy to the school, but I knew I had to do this because I knew if I didn't do this, it would happen again and nothing would be done. And just after that, there was an intervention, we had a meeting, and then we now had they now have standard operating procedures for when a child is bullied. This is what should be done. So I'm telling this story because for both parents and the teachers, nothing good comes out of avoiding the situation. But everything good comes out of when you address the situation, work together as a team, and keep everyone informed. So I'm just going to leave it there. Thank you all for listening. And I think I will be able to wait for the Q&A. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ma. Please, once again, show some love, some appreciation to our speaker. Dr. Osazwa, that was quite inspiring and insightful, especially for people and parents generally who are not too familiar with that world of special needs. And thank you for being a shining light. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. It's still the 5th annual Mental Wellness Conference, courtesy OISA Foundation, and this is a never-ending battle against the stigma associated with mental illnesses. And of course, we want to ensure that people are kept abreast and are given as much information as possible, and we need to keep this momentum, not just as an organization, but as individuals, practitioners, and caregivers in schools. Finally, we have one more delivery today in terms of papers, and this is by the Permanent Secretary, Lagos State Ministry of Health in Lagos, in the person of Dr. Olusegun Ogboye. Now, Dr. Olusegun Ogboye he's a health systems development expert, and he obtained his first degree in microbiology from the University of Lagos, and thereafter from the University of Port Harcourt, a master's degree in public health from Unilag as well. He served as the Chief Executive Officer of the Lagos State AIDS Control Agency, which has helped build from its infancy and manage the World Bank funded state HIV program development project, which was acknowledged often as the best performing project nationally. Presently, he is the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Health and is committed to the continuous improvement of the Lagos State health system and improving health outcomes of the residents of Lagos. Unfortunately, he is unavoidably absent, but he has sent a very able spokesperson in the person of Dr. Tolu Ajomale, who you've heard already at the Q&A. He serves as the coordinator of the mental health project of the Lagos State government and has developed and facilitated a number of mental health programs. Ladies and gentlemen, please do welcome Dr. Ajomale for his paper. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I bring greetings from the Permanent Secretary, Lagos State Ministry of Health, and the entire management of the Ministry of Health. The PS was very, very particular about this event, and he was supposed to be here himself. Unfortunately, we are doing a bilateral meeting for year 2023 budget, so he had to be at the State House of Assembly. And because of his passion for, I'm not sure, maybe he has a particular relationship with OISA Foundation, but he was very keen on ensuring that I come here and speak at this event. For us in the Ministry of Health, we know that mental health is a huge, huge project, and it's something that we have taken very seriously for a number of years. Perhaps maybe with a little bit of background, in 2011, we were the first state in the country, including the Federal Ministry of Health, to have a mental health desk to create programs and develop strategies for mental health in Lagos State, in the country. We were also the first state to have a mental health policy in Nigeria, including the federal. And in 2019, we're also the first state to have a contemporary mental health law in Nigeria. And I know that the federal government has been working very hard to try and do a lot of work around that. So for us, it drives our passion for mental health. It drives our commitment to ensure that we provide resources, strategies, policies, processes, and programs and services that will drive and improve mental health in Lagos State. One of those key areas that we have found to be of particular interest to us was school mental health and adolescent mental health. Perhaps I could just share a very short story. In 2017, we had a report from the Ministry of Education where they had a significant challenge with a lot of their teachers who were dealing with the very severe, mental health issues that required intervention. And for us, it was a very pressing matter because it meant that those who we had committed the care of our children to required a lot more support than what they were getting. On the other hand, we also understood that the resources that they required to provide the kind of care that was required in the school was also, there was a huge gap there. And it created an opportunity for us. One of those things that happened at that time was that we established a school mental health. We had a school health program that was designed to provide health interventions in our public schools. The reason why we focused on the public schools was because we knew that private sector had relative investments to be able to do some support for some of their students, including the fact that we know that students also pay a lot more for the services. But we know that, sometimes the amount that students pay for school may not be sufficient for the kind of quality of education we want to provide for them. But it became important for us because we know that while our focus was to protect the public and protect the interest and the capacity and create platforms for those who were vulnerable and those who were socioeconomically disadvantaged, we didn't want to create a system where they had substandard care as against those who could afford to pay for private care. So the school health program provided an opportunity for us, and a lot of interesting things happened when they went out to do a lot of their interventions. And this spread beyond just mental health, but also included other things like visual health, eye health, you know, ORL, that is ENT, nutrition. And there were a lot of interesting findings. And what struck out to me when I joined their team was that a lot of focus was placed on physical health and very little was done for mental health. We realized also at that time that there were a few other things that sprung out, but the schools were not able to respond to. One of that was the fact that a lot of the children required special attention, particularly children that had special needs. The initial approach was to create a special school to address that. And I guess that was based on a model that had existed in the past and they thought would work. But then the Ministry of Education, being very proactive as it were, decided to move from that approach to create a more integral and inclusive education system. That in itself is also still evolving because they recognize every day the importance of creating the kinds of processes and standard operating procedures that would require a consistent approach for the students that come to them. For health, we decided that while the school health program was a very huge opportunity and platform for us, we're also going to create an opportunity for mental health interventions in schools. That required us creating different strategies for these schools. On one hand, it meant that we needed to create an opportunity for support for the teachers because a lot of those teachers were dealing with a lot of significant issues, some of which were diagnosable mental illnesses and some of them were psychosocial in nature and required support. Another interesting thing you'd find is that in a number of cases, when people present with certain forms of mental distress, you realize that, like what Dr. Nyamali had mentioned before, that it is not every case that would require medication. Sometimes it is kind of support systems that exist that would help patients. So imagine you have a teacher who lives in Ikorodu and was probably posted to Badagry to go and teach there and has to enter a staff post to go there every day and still go back home and take care of our home, take care of our children. It created a lot of stresses for those teachers. And it was some of the things that we brought to the attention of the Ministry of Education, and it allowed them to evaluate the way they posted their teachers to work in the schools, so that they created social systems that were going to be able to support the teachers to be able to provide care for the students that they were working with. The second part that stood out for us was that there was a need for us to also have people who were dedicated to providing some form of mental health intervention and promotion in those schools. Initially, the approach that we thought to adopt was to pick the head teachers and pick some of the teachers to train them to act as mental health advocates in those schools. But realized that what they were able to do was create awareness. But like in most public systems, teachers tend to be posted around, and then you realize that the teachers you are trained in a particular school will probably not be there a year later when you go for an evaluation on how they are, providing the things that they've been taught. And so we decided I would work with the counselors that work in those schools so that they serve as the focal persons in each of those public schools where the students know that they can have someone they can talk to about their mental health issues. It has been a bit of a stretch in engagement and implementation because the concept of mental health is still something that a lot of people still struggle with. And we knew that for us to be able to drive that effectively, we had to create interesting portfolios for us to be able to provide those kinds of interventions for them. One of the things that we did at that time also was to work with the head of service to create what we called a wellness center at the Secretariat. And that was launched in July 2020. And the idea of that was to create a special service just for Lagos State employees where they can come in and get access to mental health support from specialists, from counselors, from social workers. And we created the system in such that when they come into that wellness center, it didn't feel like they were in a hospital. So it encouraged a lot more people to tell others who needed support to come there to get help. And the number of people who had come there, the most significant population, were the teachers, not the accountants, not the administrators, not the doctors, the teachers. They were the highest number of people that we saw at the wellness center. And so there are a few things that we now decided that we're going to be the new approach that we're going to take for mental health in schools. One of that is to create opportunities for the students themselves to feel safe in their environment. But there are three things that stand out very peculiarly, and I think it's something I want to emphasize on. Number one, there are three main areas that students generally are existing, and those three areas are the things that influence their development. One is their home. A lot of times, because we live in Lagos and a lot of people are working, we tend to second the responsibility of the development of our children to the teachers. I have a very young daughter, and one of the things that I've understood in my interaction with her teachers is that a lot of the things that they learn in school need to be applied at home for that teaching and that learning to be consistent. Otherwise, they learn certain things in school, they come home, they are not doing what they have been taught in school, and then it makes it difficult for them to continue to progress. Rather, the school has to repeat the same processes over and over again. So the home. So for mental health, how does that apply in the home life? A lot of the triggers, like we had mentioned before, that influence some of the mental distress that some of our children face are things that happen at home. Domestic violence is a very huge issue. We have the homes where parents are not present to even provide the kind of support that the children need. They are probably living with people who aren't even their parents and who are just guardians. I'll give you a short story. An organization decided that they were going to take care of the education of a group of children from a particular community. They took them out of that community and sponsored their education in a private school. They were doing very well in boarding school and they were doing fantastic. But then they realized that when they had to go home during vacation, the homes they were going to wasn't somewhere they even had a bed to sleep on. Lots of times they had to sleep on the walkway, on the corridors. So you can imagine the contradiction when you go to a private school, very high standards, and they're getting quality education, but you have to go back home to a place where to get 2 meals a day is a celebration. If you get 1 meal a day, you are very lucky. But then they were getting 3 meals in school. And so the home life itself is a huge component for a child's development. And without the required support present there, the interventions you will provide in the school will end up being like pouring water in a basket. The second part that I think is also very critical to child development is the community. So you have a child that probably has to travel by bus or by car to a school in a well-established community. Where they live is not so great, and the community in which they live is also not so great. The people they interact with in those communities when they are not in school, probably when they're on holiday, is also impacted. So there is the effect of the community where they also have children who are not in school, where they have adults who they see every day who probably influence them in one way or the other. People they see who smoke marijuana, people they see who drink alcohol, people who they see who market themselves as commercial sex workers, for example. And those children face that contradiction every day in the community, at home, but they are required to get development when they come to school. So the work for the development of every child is multifaceted, and there's a number of issues that need to be put into consideration when we are doing this work. And so we understand that it's the Ministry of Health. We can't even do it alone, which is why a lot of our interactions with the Ministry of Education has become more pertinent, the Ministry of Youth and Social Development, especially the Office of Disability Affairs when it comes to children with learning disorders. I was hoping that Osazo will still be here when I mentioned this. Dr. Akindayomi and our office had been working the past few months to develop a new policy for children with special needs that will include different kinds of resources that will be committed by the Ministry of Health for those that will need hospital or healthcare interventions, for children that will require special educational needs, those that will require social support, and those whose families will also require support. And I'm very, very optimistic as to how we will drive that and possibly launch that early 2023. and see a radical change in the way we approach children with special needs in our state. So for us, there are several things that I think are pertinent. And I think what is also more important is the fact that we have a lot of awareness in terms of leadership and their commitment to ensuring that the resources that are required that the state can provide are driven appropriately. But beyond that, that we also are able to create opportunities for partnership with the private sector, with non-governmental organizations, with civil society organizations to provide some leverage and drive the traction that we need to make sure that those who live in Lagos, especially our young people, get access to the kind of help and support they need. I think lastly, I will just say two things. Number one, a lot of times when we drive the awareness around mental health, we find that we require, strong platforms to be able to do that. 2 years ago, Mr. Governor approved that we can have 2 special celebrations for children and adolescents, that on the 26th of May every year will become the Lagos Children's Mental Health Awareness Day in Lagos State, and that in March of every year would have the University Mental Health Day for us to be able to drive awareness around mental health and also promote and develop mental health champions in those communities. I would be happy to have you participate in our campaign on those two days, and also create more of that platform for a lot of us to be able to engage and drive the message around mental health for our young people. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you very much, Dr. Ajomale. What impressed me more was the way, so I thought there was a script over there, and the way you were it was just like, just pouring out. So, and that's one of the tell signs of somebody who is literally engrossed in what they do. It's second nature to them. They don't need to over prepare. But I think it's fair to say on behalf of OISA Foundation, everyone watching and listening, that thank you for the work you do. Well done. You might not get as much accolades as you might want as a state official, but I know your eye is on the ball and you will not be deterred. But the Wellness Center, for example, is a fantastic initiative. I didn't even know it was there. So, and the ripple effect of that is once the teachers are once the teachers are attended to and taken care of and treated, let me use the word healed loosely, it has a ripple effect on the students, and that is a major win. So thank you for that. And please, our regards to Dr. Ogboye as well. We would love to have him here physically, hopefully next year. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again, those of you online, for joining. There's so much that has been said. We do have our social media handles in the group for those of you online, so please do follow. We will give you as much update as we can, and of course for communication, a number of you have been asking or requesting for links, a repeat of this video. So if we have your data, it will be easier for us to get in touch with you. Also want to, I think I saw, okay, a lot of accolades in the chat room to Dr. Very wonderful speech, sir. Fantastic initiatives and all whatnot. On that note, we would like to, for the closing remarks, call on our chairperson for today. She opened and she will close this ceremony as well. She is the founder, Oxbridge Tutorial College, OTC, in the person of Dr. Olufemi Ogunsoya. Thank you. A round of applause once again.
Right, what an amazing session. I'd like us first and foremost to appreciate OISA Foundation for the opportunity to be here, to glean from the experience, expertise of all the people who have spoken today. It's been an amazing session. I've taken copious notes, which I'm going to develop and see how much more I can elevate whatever it is I'm doing. And I'm sure there are other members of my association online also who will work on this, and parents as well who have been listening along with us. And, just to recap very quickly as I started, is that we need to be very vigilant. We need to be very, very observant of all children under our care. be it at home, be it in school, be it in any sector that we have children, be it in church even. Yes, we've spoken about the faith aspects, the spirituality. Even in school, we need, I'm sorry, in church, we need to be very, very observant. I like that phrase, know your child. Know the children under your care in school, at home. Pay close attention. Because like we discussed earlier, there are little signs that we can pick up that would help us to be able to identify whatever might be going on with a child. I was going to recommend to the chaplain of Methodist Girls High School to be part of an association because there's ongoing conversation. I know OISA is doing so much, but there's ongoing conversation. But then I remember that Methodist Communion belongs to COPSAIL, which is the umbrella body for all the Association of All Presidents in Lagos State. So, you know, more involvement with that would also help. So that's why we're set up to support each other, to help each other on a continuous basis. And another major takeaway for us today, and we're all advocates hereafter, I said, go out and preach the gospel. For parents online, for schools online, for us in the comfort that OISA has brought us to in this environment, is that early detection does make monumental differences. And therefore, if we are observant, if we detect, as I said at the beginning, if you see something, say something. Let's act immediately. I'll take away the, I think it was Dr. Swasa who said, be your brother's keepers, be your child's keeper, be your children's friends' keepers. Let us spread, let it be like a ripple effect that will go into the community, not just in the school, not just in our respective self-serving homes, but in our respective community. And I know that, I think it's South African or Chinese saying that, saying it's a whole village that trains a child. It used to be very, very relevant in past. It's dwindling, gradually fizzling out in our environment because a lot of parents don't want you to comment or talk about their children. But, you know, we still need to be our brother's keepers. And therefore, for us to be vigilant, for us to see how things can be detected early. Let us make this business, this wellness of adolescents, because we learned that a lot is developed, 75%, before the child is 14. Let us therefore go out into the community as we go out today, be observant and be determined that we are going to make a difference to the mental wellness of people around us. Adults, yes, they need theirs, but then the children as well. I was also going to recommend that schools need, yes, I agree, we need to be more visible in how we present the support that children can get in our respective schools. Have talking walls, have posters all around you in the schools. Know who the child protection officer, if you don't have one, make sure a school has a child protection officer. They have the counselor that they can go to. Teachers detect, refer to counselors, and so on and so forth. And this would help us all tremendously. Lagos State Ministry of Health, you are doing amazingly well. Another round of applause for that unscripted delivery. I'm trying to copy him too by standing like this. Right, you're doing well, but there's an assumption I'd like to correct. We shouldn't focus on only public schools. I know that for Ministry of Education, we work in partnership, the private and public sector, and that's how come we have COPSAIL. But for when it comes to this issue, please don't make the assumption that private schools have the resources and therefore can afford to engage all of these people that we need. It was a whole list that Dr. Osaswa shared with us that we need to have, from counselor to psychologists to psychiatrists to pediatrician to this and that. But you see, when we have a general platform for all schools in Lagos State that we're talking about, for example, it helps tremendously. It makes a lot of difference. There are private schools and there are private schools. There are the AFEDs, I'm sure you know. So, you know, we need to be able to draw everybody, and because the population of children in those schools as well cannot be ignored. So we need to work together. And I was going to talk to parents as well, because I'm sure there are some parents either here, I mean, all of us are parents, of course, and parents online. And this is that we need to be more transparent with schools. We need to be more supportive of schools. Because one of the questions I took to Dr. Sorry, I'm not good with names, Nemali, was that what happens when you make the recommendation to the parent and the parent does not want to comply, is not interested, will not go to whoever you refer them to. We need to work together, because at the end of the day, every parent must appreciate the fact that whatever a school recommends is in the interest of the child. Because we are nation builders in schools. We are building children for the future. And whatever we therefore recommend is not self-serving. It's not because we want the child to do well so that our results can be, we can add one figure to our results when the percentages are being calculated. No, it's in the interest of the child. Education is all about the child at the end of the day, and the differences we can make and how we can mold them and prepare them to be future leaders, to be able to make the difference even in our own Nigerian community, as we know that we need. And we need children to be in the right frame of mind, to be able to learn even in the classroom, because students can be there. They can sit in the classroom. They can be looking at the teacher. They can be there, but not there. And therefore, you know, there's a lot that needs to be addressed. And parents need, like the example I shared, my mental problem started because at home, there are so many issues that require my energy. So a child might be in the classroom, listening to you, watching you, not listening, but watching you as apparently, ostensibly listening to you. But the mind will be at home with what's going on between mom and dad. So we need to be transparent. We need to work in cooperation. Like I said at the beginning, every education system, every school is a tripod: the parents, the student, and the school. If one leg, I'm a scientist, so if one leg is missing from a tripod, we all know tripod now. If one leg is missing, the other two cannot stand. And therefore, whatever the school might be doing to support that child mentally and otherwise, if the parents are not cooperating, it will be futile effort. And therefore, parents online, parents here, please, when it comes, and I'm so happy about our MC, host, moderator, his learning process, what he's taken away from previous conferences like this, and he's been able to apply. But one major appeal today would be that parents should please cooperate. Parents should please listen to the school. Parents should please work together with the school in order to be able to make their children the very best that they can be. So mental health policy and law should be introduced to all schools, not just public schools. APEN, I'm not sure how much we've heard about it, but we need to shout from the rooftops, whatever the policies are, because schools also want to know what they can do, what will support them, what will be the process, what will be the procedure from A to B to C to D in order to be able to help these children. So if there's a policy, I know that I think it was in the previous governor of Lagos, Ambode's time, that we had the child protection policy. And this was made mandatory for all schools. Every member of staff in every school had to sign the child protection policy and keep a copy in the school, in the file in the school. So it could be the same that could be applied to the mental health policy and law for Lagos State. So in summary, it's been an amazing, enlightening, informative, eye-opening experience. Once again, I doff my hat to OISA Foundation. I'm happy I was able to make it. I was going to wriggle out, but I'm happy I made it. I'm happy I made it. I'm leaving born again from the experiences of all that's been shared. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Thank you very much, man. I think there's something, we should have put this podium here. There's something about this corner that makes you just like, let the words just flow. We appreciate the time. We appreciate the fact that you didn't wriggle out and you wriggled in. And we're very grateful for that summary and the recap. It was very, very precise. On that note, I will just part with this. If you've been here since the beginning, what can you do? What are the steps you take? Immediately you log off or immediately you walk out that door. I think one of the things is and this is particularly to parents and your kids, pick out a day in the week or weekend and take your children out or take your child out and pick 5 questions, random questions that you would never normally ask, and just listen to the responses. So for example, oh, who do you think, I don't know, loves you more? Who do you think is, just pick some questions that will strike conversations, and you'll be shocked as to the insight you'll get from their response. A lot of the things that we think they're thinking as parents, they're not. And that's both the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I would strongly recommend that. And when you have that information, then you can now work backwards to deconstruct what might or might not be the issue with your child or children. Also with the schools, it's very important to have an open line with them. So for example, with my kids, there's a WhatsApp group for parents, and I'm sure in every school has that for every year. A lot of parents usually don't participate in those forums. Myself, I was guilty of that, but there was a homework that was brought by one of my kids, maths question. And even though I studied engineering, I felt like the dumbest person. And I did something I would never normally do. I reached out in the group, like, oh, this is the question. Is any other parent experiencing headache, trauma the way I am? And the whole chat room just lit up. A lot of parents would say, oh, me too. Some even sent solutions to the question. And it was very encouraging to know that there are actually parents there who are going through what you're going through, but you just need to let them know. So tell your stories and let it be heard. And I think information gathering, educating yourself constantly, trying to know what is out there, what is abreast in terms of policy from the government side, and in terms of implementation of initiatives from the side of the school and parastatals. So I think in a nutshell, this has been a very productive day and a very good day. So thank you to all our speakers as well. I would like to close up by calling one of the trustees of the OISA Foundation, in the person of Mr. Taiwo Olasore, to give the vote of thanks. Thank you.
I think I'm given the most easiest task. First of all, a round of applause to all the speakers. And also, in the words of John F. Kennedy, don't ask what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country. So on that note, can I ask everybody to stand up and let's read the mental wellness pledge. So repeat after me. I, not my own name, your own name. I pledge to be informed and to be aware of mental wellness and disorder, spread the word, encourage help-seeking behaviors, and reduce the stigma attached to mental wellness and disorders. Seek help from the right place, right people, and the right time when experiencing mental health-related symptoms. Show love to people dealing with mental health disorder and their families. Be the voice of the rights of the mentally ill in our community. Thank you. Then donation pledge, I'd like to say, first of all, I think this is a very apt topic. I think there's no household that doesn't have their own various experiences of mental unwellness. So on that note, I'd like to say, first of all, a big thank you to our chairperson, Ms. Dr. Olufemi Busoya, for taking our time and not bailing out on us in joining us in today's event. I think even our opening remark and our closing remark were quite ideal and also to say thank you to our various speakers. First of all, can I just call them one by one so I can just give you our own token of appreciation in a plaque? So, Dr. Ogusanya, please. On behalf of the OISA Foundation, I say a big thank you. And a wonderful paper, very, very illustrative by Dr. Veronica. I want to say a big thank you on behalf of the OISA Foundation for once again gracing us with your presence. You were here last year and would come again soon. Well, what can I say? Although we meant to say Dr. Olusegun Bubaye, but well represented. I couldn't have done a better job, Dr. Ojumari. Thank you so much. I think my dear brother, there's no day that I don't learn some new things from him. Where's Oscar? I think Oscar's been with us from day one, trying to also spread the word. I can't say we couldn't have had a better moderator to handle this event. He's part of the inner council and everything, always coming up with ideas in terms of speakers, even coordinating. Even this morning, we're still trying to rearrange the entire sitting arrangement. What can we say? Say thank you. He's actually not meant to be here today. He had other prior engagement, but we use family power to ensure that he does not bail out. So thank you so much, also. I think it's also right to say thank you to the OISA group itself, chaired by my older sister. I think it's all the efforts and every year trying to define different things, looking at who should we bring on board. And I keep asking, how do you know these people? Because, it's very, 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 very rare, because our dedication to trying to foster this initiative is quite alarming. Even as early as 4 a.m. this morning, she was even sending text messages, and I was quickly responding, ensuring that everything is dotted. So a round of applause to my sister. To the technical team, and of course, I can't, but not the least, not mention our coordinator, Timi Tokpe. Well done. So, and finally, our guests, both online and present. We don't take your time for granted. I hope the time here was well invested, not well spent, or well spent. And we pray that there's a lot of issues going on in our environment can be quite toxic. So we always ask that we're also very aware of our environment, to say thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you again next year. This is our 5th year anniversary, and hopefully we want to be doing this for years and years and years to come. So please spread the word. Thank you.